This time Dominic is gonna do the intro. Ba-da-ba.
This guy. Hello, this is the Skein podcast. And today we're talking about deception, tricks, magic, counterfeits, forms, things like that. And the reason why I'm bringing up this topic is because as I've gotten older, I always knew this was the case, but I've come to accept that deception, magic, theater, like mesmerizing, counterfeits, all of these are a part of organic life. Like even nature does this. Like creatures deceive each other, they camouflage, they exploit each other. So it's just a general question. It's just a general situation. And the topic that came about, how this topic came about for me is I was thinking of I was discussing with my sister, I guess mental illnesses with males and females due to the show Dahmer just came out. And it had me thinking about uh why some women who are sort of like into bad boys or so to speak. And it reminded me of a conversation between David Buss and Jordan B. Peterson where they said women who are into bad boys are seeing sort of like bad boys as the counterfeit for a healthy man, a healthy, strong man with competence, with confidence, with a checked aggression and stuff. So it's like you have the form, but you don't have the content. And it reminded me of that example I gave in one of my videos about the jewel beetles, where their schema of a female is like something brown and shiny. And if you give them something brown and shiny like a bottle, they'll try to mate with it. And so is this it made me think of like how like there are also different situations where deceptions foster interactions, foster relationships, and we even deceive ourselves. So there are different types of deception, of course. So that's all I wanted to say. And I guess, wow, I guess Harry's brushing his teeth now. That's interesting. Anyway, uh, I guess with all that said, what the deception is, because I used to be against lying, and it wasn't because I was influenced by Kant's categorical imperative. It was just on my own thing where I just prefer the truth, prefer to know the technical realities of things, and I like knowing what's actually there. I like unconcealing things. I like knowing how the magic tricks work, so I can imitate them or make them happen. I guess I don't like being tricked. And there's this feature of deception where it's just like sometimes you want to be deceived, sometimes you want to be mesmerized, or you want to be captured, or sometimes you are captured. And it makes me think of like Eastern religions, or specifically with like Hinduism, that sometimes it'll say like all is Maya, all is illusion, and that a lot of our experiences are basically us trying to get through illusions, trying to get through deceptions, trying to get through uh different counterfeits, like fool's gold, like things that don't fulfill their own criteria to be the actual thing, to uh, paraphrase a notion from Hegel. So these are all the things. What do you have? Do you have anything to add?
I mean, so I was thinking like 3 points. Uh, kind of reminds me the question in the first place of that TV show Money Heist, which
Yeah,
has a lot of tricks in it and
yeah,
deception and character playing with trust and distrust and red herrings and third parties.
yeah,
Um, but then I was thinking, like, with your quote, right? It goes into this thing about truth, right? Which is what is truth? What is living truthfully, right? Because when we talk about belief, belief isn't simply, you know, I say I believe this, I believe that. No, no. Belief is what you do in your life. In If you contradict your beliefs by your actions, then will people will say, "Oh, you're not really genuine in your beliefs," right? So then the third part I was thinking of, besides those two, was so the Jordan Peterson point on why women like date bad boys. And so in the first place, this comes from a framing of like the important thing that women do the like one important thing that they do is like choosing a guy, which is very, moralizing to make it like, oh, to be subservient to a man, give birth, take care of your children, cook, clean, all that stuff. And like, you need a man, you know, and if your life is going wrong, that's because you chose the wrong man, which is, you know, a lot of these gender things, I think, in the first place, even though the emotional architectures are different because of how gender is imposed as a thing in society and we impose gender ourselves, like, still, you could argue from the same basis, oh, why do men choose bad women or something like that? And so there we see that truth uh is you can lie implicitly by both what you don't say and what you do say instead of saying that.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it makes me think of because I brought up that example of the David Buss and Jordan B. Peterson because these were just all random strands of different topics. I just brought that as an example to like illustrate sort of like, oh, it's interesting how like you can sort of be deceived by a counterfeit or by the form of a situation. Because like I was listening to, well, I was remembering something by Plato who said like with sexual or romantic love, like eros, it's what's between people, and it's what allows you to see the form of beauty in other people. So it had me thinking like, okay, when it comes to making a situation intelligible to determine what's true about it, if you're thinking platonically, you're thinking in terms of like assessing the form of the situation, the form that makes the content intelligible to you, that makes the presencing of the situation what it is. So in that regard, that's where I was coming from with it. And yeah.
I mean, so with regards to the truthfulness, I guess, presencing of a situation, you said, and it made me think how the trick wise, there's some people who misunderstand situations or or just misrepresent them willfully because they'd rather have it be one way than the other,
Yeah.
right? Like say it's kind of like a video game, right? And it like bugs out, an hour into the video game and just kind of like continuing to play that video game from new game, but not really dealing with, oh, it doesn't work out that way, but trying to situate oneself as if it does. So, in a way, you know, people can sort of game reality like this, but they're the ones being played or playing themselves. Like, I'd imagine this is sort of like what being jilted is like. Rejection is not it's having a sort of reality where this outcome could be possible, which it technically is possible, but it's sort of the willful rejection of rejection. So as to say, oh yeah, they didn't really mean that, like forever and ever or something like that.
It reminds me of that clip, like that scene in Dumb and Dumber, where the woman was like, I would not date you if you were like the chance of me dating you would be like 1 in a million. And then the guy paused, like Jim Carrey paused, and then he looked away. He's like, so there's still a chance.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very interesting because it's like deception. I guess deception no ties with manipulation, but it's like there's a sort of it. I guess sometimes it depends on almost the sentiment, the coloring of the situation, the coloring you have for it, as far as how you make it intelligible to you. Like you can deceive people with, if you're doing a magic trick or if you're trying to entertain them or if you're doing art. Like a lot of art is basically an illusion. Like it's artifice. That's why they call it artifice or invention or something like that. So it's just like there's a thin line between I guess what I call primary construction, which is sort of like the construction done by nature, the spontaneous bottom up construction that happens, and secondary construction, which is more top down, which is stuff that we do, what we make, and stuff like that, and how our entanglement, our enmeshment with things make things appear for us or make things important to us or make things yeah, I guess that sums it up. Yeah.
I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, I lost what I was trying to say. I might come
That
back.
basically sums it up. 2 plus 3 plus 8 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. I don't know.
Or maybe it was a deception. Maybe it's like I'm
That's
just
kind of like what it is, though. It's kind of like a lot of stuff can tend to be either it like succeeds or it fails,
yeah,
or it's on like furlough. It's kind of to be continued.
yeah. It's it's cool because it's like you can get deceptions from because when we think of deception, or even if we think of because I'm also fascinated by mistakes or problems, like how
Mm.
problems come about or how mistakes come about, like the errors that come about, or whether it's errors in how we work or errors in how the world expresses itself or how we fit into the world and stuff. So it's like uh if you if you have a situation where um yeah, I'm losing it. That's annoying. Today's my off day, man. I'm having an off day, which is fascinating because it goes into it takes me into sort of like how do you like with anything you're doing, if you're like I've been listening to Dr. K's streams with different Twitch users about their what goes on sort of behind the scenes or what they may be struggling with or how to work things out. And it seems like whenever you're doing something like this, like a podcast or making a YouTube video or giving a product, there's this performance you're putting on. So there's this. So right now, since I'm having a bad day, I could pretend to cover it up and maybe like talk less or present less and whatnot. But that would not be that wouldn't be as revealing. And I think that's what we usually consider genuine. If something is more revealing, if something reveals to us what's going on behind the scenes, or shows us this is how the magic trick works, or this is how we make ourselves, this is how we make the appearances that we have. Because there's nothing within the appearances that we present that indicate to us the technicalities of what's going on or how it's implemented. So when somebody
Excuse me.
what?
I was listening to this song Murder She Wrote by
Yeah. Murder she wrote. That one.
and
Murder she wrote.
it's sort of about, I guess a lot of songs are about that. Like this woman who's very promiscuous and stuff, and he's like, not pay water bill and stuff like that. You not pay water bill and shit like that. She had babies with white Chinese Indian coolie man, and they don't want them. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty you know, shots fired, honestly. But I
Wow.
was thinking it's kind of, I don't know why I mentioned that actually. Maybe I just tricked myself into thinking I was making a point.
Yeah. Self deception is itself also interesting too, because there's like it seems like I guess with deception or with any deception, there's the technicalities, what implements the presencing of the appearance or the situation. Then there's the observer, like the receiver, who is sort of like signaled the appearance or signaled the technicalities. or if they can tune into the technicalities, they can decipher the appearance better. Like if you think of it as like a stage performance where it's like based on what's going on backstage or based on what I know about the script, this is how the actors are going to perform the scene. Like when they're doing the acting or whatever.
There's also like I feel like trickery comes with a certain amount of you hold the attention with one thing, but you do something else, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It feels like to a certain extent, uh there's a trickery involved with like living in the world, you
yeah,
know, where you might intend to do one thing, but you end up doing something else. So you kind of feel tricked by, at first you want to do this thing, but then you're like, oh, I don't actually want to do this thing. So it feels like a trick. It feels like you've kind of entrapped yourself in this sort of thing, in this way of feeling about stuff, because it branches from like good to bad, bad to good. Um, how you feel about things, the complex emotions and stuff. So I was thinking about like I have a shift at like 5, right? So I
yeah.
need to like drive to that in like 20 minutes or something. Um and it's like $20 an hour. You make like $28 an hour, right? That's like pretty good.
I think I make like $19 an hour right now.
19?
Yeah,
Shit. Well, it's better than I do, but this one was plus $5 because it's on a Sunday.
yeah, yeah. That's how it is at
Um,
Costco. You get time and a half. Unless I like
time
get
and a half on Sunday.
yeah,
That's good. Yeah. But the this is time and a third though. But the sort of one second, but I was thinking about the way that I kind of like go into action. Like for instance, while me talking right now, and there's sort of like an acceleration always associated with it, acceleration and deceleration, so that like in a conversation I can kind of be slow to start but also like slow to stop.
mm,
So there we get into this thing like there's subjective and objective things. Like objective is like what you're doing, what you're talking about, all that stuff, the rules. And subjective is like what you intend to do and stuff. And we say about objective stuff, oh, maybe I was tricked by some sort of falling of the light or whatever the phrase is, or like you saw a coat in the dark and it looked like a person. Like for instance, uh the basketball court down the street from me, when I leave and I look at like one of the hoops, one of the kind of stands that it's on from the back,
yeah,
it has this kind of padding on it that makes it look like a person from the corner of my eye. So I'm like, oh, is that a person? And I'm like, no, that's not a person. Or like when I'm biking down that path over there, when you get to this bridge where you kind of go like this and it's a curve, there's a way that the reflection of light can make a shadow sort of come to you toward you, which is your shadow. So it looks as if like somebody's like walking toward you, but it's actually your shadow coming from the direction you're moving in towards you.
yeah,
So a trick of the light. But then we assume trickery in a more literal sense because here it's still sort of subjective because it's you sort of deciding the way things are inaccurately and not dealing with, oh well, you see, this is actually just my senses making up this stuff, right? Or like say you kind of stub your toe, or you step like you walk down the stairs and you expect there to be another step, so you kind of like stumble a bit, right?
yeah,
That's you sort of tricking yourself, but then you being tricked by other people, or in a more subjective sense according to intent is, oh no, I'm gonna be told about the pasta. Yeah? Oh, thank you.
Oh, this is mine.
Oh, shit.
Come eat.
Making a
You have to
video.
go to work soon. You want me to bring you a plate?
Sure.
Are you gonna eat?
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, this is no deception.
Just come down.
Hey, but it's what you guys come for, so
Deception. Am
but
I lying to you right now? Am I being dishonest? Oh.
it's
Get
like
your food.
like with these scenarios, if you think of what constitutes them, it's sort of like different domains or different elements uh showing or revealing other elements or showing them on a different uh like I guess showing a different side of them or them sort of like casting their shadows or casting their form or casting
That's
their
good.
casting their motion or casting their flavor or their color, like these sort of like more these like the features that are not in themselves, I guess, an object, but they're sort of like the interaction of objects with objects and interaction of observers with objects, like color, so to speak. Like color is very interactionist. It's not something that stands in and of itself in the world. Unless you want to, even if you think in terms of frequencies, there's just sort of like the way our physiology is structured for us to have cones and rods and stuff receives the world at a certain frequency and receives it in a certain way, and then we process it, and then we the world affords itself for us to interact with it in a certain way, and it lends itself to consciousness and to memory and and all these different functions. So it's like you have these different domains that are, I guess, a way to put it is like even the mind itself has these the mind itself has these sort of like interactionist properties to it, where it's not just its own objects, the objects of its functions, or the objects of the stimuli, the mental stuff, or the physiological stuff that is interpreted, but you get sort of like the aftertaste, you get the color, you get the shadow, you get the form without the content. Like so, I guess I'm trying to tease out what makes a situation a deception. How does a deception come about? Like if you look at the mechanics of it or the technicalities of it, and that's what I'm trying to get at. And that's what I'm basically trying to articulate with how I see what's going on.
I mean, I think it's like it's accurate what you said about objects interacting, not just an object itself that you can kind of like measure,
Yeah.
because I think that's what like character is. Is it sort of some like the combination of things, but not literally just a combination where you could like, read all the stats and say you're this, that, and the other thing. But it's sort of that interaction and the feelings about that lead to not like a conclusion, but more of an occlusion that like you don't come up with like an in sort of, result. Like I think this, that, and the other thing about this person. It's more like the continuing characterization of the process by which you think about and conversate with that person.
Yeah, yeah. There is that feature there. There's also I also go with Vervaeke's notion that a character is sort of like you get constraints and you get variations, and these well melded together gives you a functioning engine. And so that's still interactionist, of course. So that's why I use like in my previous video on well, my recent video on my exploring my politics in a very technical, rambly, and exploratory and excessive way, as far as like how I understand things from some angle. It was not exhaustive, of course, but and it wasn't everything I think and everything I perceived. It was just what felt relevant to me at the time that I could capture. But anyway, like it's just like I get at things as sort of like you have a device, like you get like things form a device, things form a particular contraption, like the interactions, the stuff that makes up a situation or makes up an object or makes up an inner landscape, a physiological landscape or an interpretive landscape. Like each of these become their own domains, they become their own realms, and how they conglomerate makes up a complex given. Like we ourselves are very complex in that we are we are of the world, like we are the world, the measurable worlds. We're forms of the measurable world and stylized in a particular way, and then we have like an interior or just modeling feature to it that models things and interprets things. And then we have the models themselves becoming their own things. We have the interpretation becoming their own things. We get interpretations of models, we get models of interpretations. So it's just like you get all this weird feedback looping and you get this teasing out of uh the all the different ways you can have a property. Like I guess I'm thinking in terms of the scheme I'm approaching it with was like an exploded diagram where I'm exploding all the different domains, all the different features that go into making a situation or making us. And once I explode it, I integrate it back together, and then it gives me a device. But prior to that, it's just an organic unity that you take to and make relevant to yourself in certain ways. And if, depending on the relevance, like how you pointed out, like a lot of magic tricks depend on just basically a trick of attention, where they have your attention fixate on some area or on something while they do something else. So there's sort of like this inattentive blindness that takes place and brings about a result. So it's like with the device of the world or the situation of the world, the organic unity of the world, we get blindsided because we are finite and we only have a limited scope that we can take things in to process. And there are places that we go to inside and outside, and we can't at every moment exhaust ourselves and exhaust the world and get at everything that's going on and make every single thing relevant and see how they fit, like see the technicalities of how they fit together, how they stand presencing, and how even absencing, like absences, create a sort of like form that you typically see. Like you get like spatialized shapes. Like if you cut a hole in a piece of paper, like if you cut a square out of a piece of paper, like a spatialized shape, like even absence can have that, or that optical illusion, where you have the circles making what the corners carved into them, like there are four circles distributed and next to each other, like in a row, and not in what's literally a row, but in like sort of like a boxed row, and then you cut into them different corners, and it gives you a cube. So even the absence gives you a particular gestalt. So all of these different things help us get at uh the different complex uh appearances of reality. And what's fascinating is these appearances are not just presences, but are also absences. So it shows me that with any given situation, you can be sort of like tricked by all the features you're considering and all the features you're not considering. So yeah.
I think like there's going back to that game metaphor I made where it's like the game freezes halfway in.
Yeah.
There's also this kind of conceptual difficulty you get with that too, where it's like, why see it as a game in the first place? So I find this interesting thing with tricks because I'm like, well, in the first place, why is it really that interesting that something uh subverted your expectations, because
Yeah,
if you think about it, that's not really that interesting because you're just focusing on your expectations.
yeah,
So like something can subvert your expectations and not necessarily be unexpected, because the what you expect is not the opposite of that isn't the same as the unexpected in, like, the uh the true sense of like, oh wow, damn, something unexpected can be like, oh, he ate a hot dog today instead of a hamburger. Yeah. And we're sort of like, wow, he ate a hot dog instead of a hamburger today. The fucking madman. He did that? I can't fucking believe it. You know?
yeah,
But I guess that is how like interactions go to dampened extents. It's like whether you speak or not, it's a sort of the difference that the presence of another person makes, and it's the unexpected
mm,
in like a sort of mundane sense.
yeah. That's why I guess I feel like people should. There's sort of like a decentering you have to do from your egocentrism or your reflexivity, like your self consciousness, which is usually born out of other consciousnesses being present with you and capable of making you an object or something to consider. But typically, if you're really trying to get at something, like sometimes, like I used to notice when I was functional in the past that it wasn't just inference, but I was more exploratory. Like I'd observe more, like I look around. So as a result, I was not usually caught off guard because I was always anticipating. I was always not so much expecting, but just sort of like trying to see more than what I fixate on, trying to not so much like be inattentive, but being in tune. Like there's a sort of like I don't know what to call it, whether it's attention or a sort of like balancing, a sort of like you're you can keep to it's sort of like if you're driving and talking, where it's like you're able to talk and have the conversation, but you're still able to automatically function. You're still able to do certain things automatically. This sort of like top down processing still takes place to react. But I mean, this top down processing takes place where you can do certain auxiliary things, but the bottom up processing is more automatic and habitual. So if with the deception, there's a sense of uh, you almost expect that your bottom up processing will never mislead you or would always satisfy your expectations. Even though you know you don't know everything and you can't exhaust everything, there's this sense of like, well, the world should continue to be intelligible and it should continue to be like I guess some of it also depends on the kind of person that you are because some people always expect novelty, some people others expect regularity, some people expect it in different domains or at different times, in different places, and so on. So all of that goes into factor to make it a situation complex and why you can't fully get at uh why a situation would get at you the way it does. Like take for instance, like one of my friends who is praying for something. And there's a sense of like, well, I think of it like, well, there are lots of people who pray who their prayers don't get answered for whatever reason. Like there are people who get cancer and who just die. So it might be like, unless there's a top down process where there's I guess, a plan or a purpose that either disrupts the continuing unfolding that leads to your death if you experience something unexpected that's tragic or unfavorable, then you things just kind of proceed how they proceed, or even if or how I put it was uh like we're plants and we get rained on, and the rain is sort of like the general regularity, the general benefits of that we get from life. And but despite this, there are still situations where we can be uprooted or we can be choked by weeds. Like weeds can grow, animals can walk on us, people can consume us. We can experience even the rain itself can flood us. So just like there's no there's no restriction on things becoming excessive or things becoming scarce. There's nothing halting the potential for things to change or become a certain way with us. And I think this is what allows there to be continuous development, adaptation, deception, and like deception presumes dynamism, basically.
You know what my favorite magic trick is, Dominic?
But
The one that made your hairline disappear.
joke's on you. I never had a hairline.
Oh shit.
It was a deception.
Mm. I wonder, there should be a guy with a hairline that goes like this. It goes just kind of sinuous inside and outside, and he's like, yeah, my hairline is always both receding and whatever the opposite of receding is. Proceeding.
I don't remember.
I shall proceed and continue to have a hairline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, I think we've said all we can say, right? Because we're almost done. We only have like 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we can end it here.
Uh, yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. I hope you were able to get something out of this, despite our rambles and how difficult this topic is. Like on the surface, it looks very simple. It's deceptive, basically. But once you explore it, you get at so many different things, and it takes you into the nature of reality and the nature of
This video is deceptive because it wasn't helpful to you, but you thought it might be, but it wasn't at all.
or maybe it's not so much helpful to you, but you help it. Yeah. All right, that's it. See ya. Bye-bye.